right out of the box on election night, the president claimed that there was major fraud underway. I mean, this happened, as far as I could tell, before there was actually any potential of looking at evidence. So he claimed there was major fraud, and it seemed to be based on the dynamic that that at the end of the evening, a lot of Democratic votes came in, which changed the vote counts in certain states. And that seemed to be the basis for this broad claim that there was major fraud. And I didn't think much of that because people had been talking for weeks and everyone understood for weeks that that was going to be what happened on election night. There was an avalanche of all these allegations of fraud that built up over a number of days. And it was like playing whack-a-mole because something would come out one day and then the next day it would be another issue. Also, I was influenced by the fact that all the early claims that I understood were completely bogus and silly and usually based on complete misinformation. And so I didn't consider the quality of claims right out of the box to give me any feeling that there was really substance here. I also felt it was time for me to say something. So I set up a lunch with the AP reporter, Mike Balsamo, and I told him at lunch, I made this statement that to date we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. And the president was as mad as I've ever seen him, and he was trying to control himself, and he wasn't looking at me initially. And finally, he shoved a newspaper in my face that was quoting the AP sentence I gave to the Mike Balsamo. He said, "Did you say this?" And I said, "Yes, I did say." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because it's true." He asked me what I told him that we had been looking at the various allegations, and he said, "What have you found?" And the president said, "Well, this is killing me. You didn't have to say this. You must have said this because you hate Trump. You hate Trump." And I told him that when we got allegations of fraud, we're looking into them, and in fact, virtually all of their claims had to do with violations of rules, were not specific allegations of fraud in the court system anyway. I told him that the stuff that his people were shoveling out to the public was bullshit. I mean, that the claims of fraud were bullshit. And, he was indignant about that. And I reiterated that they'd wasted a whole month on these claims on the Dominion voting machines, and they were idiotic claims. Then he raised the big vote dump, as he called it, in Detroit, and that he said people saw boxes coming into the counting station at all hours of the morning and so forth. And I explained to him that I at that point I knew the exact number of precincts in Detroit. I think it was 630 something. I said, "Mr. President, there are 630 precincts in Detroit, and unlike elsewhere in the state, they centralized the counting process, so they're not counted in each precinct. They're moved to counting stations, and so the normal process would involve boxes coming in at all different hours. So there's nothing." And I said, "Did anyone point out to you, did all the people complaining about it point out to you, you actually did better in Detroit than you did last time?" I mean, there's no indication of fraud in Detroit. The department, in fact, when we received specific and credible allegations of fraud, made an effort to look into these to satisfy ourselves that they were without merit. My opinion then and my opinion now is that the election was not stolen by fraud.
Attorney General Barr made a public announcement on December 1st, less than a month after the election, that he had seen no suspended fraud, sufficient. Fair to say that by December 1st, you had reached the same conclusion?
It's fair to say that I agreed with Attorney General Barr's conclusion on December 1st. Yes, I did, and I supported that conclusion.
As we got later in the month of December, the president's entreaties became more urgent. He became more adamant that we weren't doing our job. We need to step up and do our job. And he had this arsenal of allegations that he wanted to rely on. And so I felt in that conversation that it was incumbent on me to make it very clear to the president what our investigations had revealed, and that we had concluded, based on actual investigations, actual witness interviews, actual reviews of documents, that these allegations simply had no merit. And I wanted to try to cut through the noise, because it was clear to us that there were a lot of people whispering in his ear, feeding him these conspiracy theories and allegations. And I felt that being very blunt in that conversation might help make it clear to the president that these allegations were simply not true. And so as he went through them in what for me was a 90-minute conversation or so, and what for the former acting AG was a 2-hour conversation, as the president went through them, I went piece by piece to say, no, that's false, that is not true, and to correct him really in a serial fashion as he moved from one theory to another.